I found the watch 3 weeks after he left, tucked behind the radiator in my bedroom, where it must have fallen that last morning. The leather strap was cracked and faded, the crystal face scratched from years of wear, and when I held it up to my ear, there was nothing, no ticking, just silence. The hands were frozen at 3:47, though I had no idea if that was AM or PM, or even what day it had stopped working. Marcus always wore it anyway, even though it hadn't kept time in years. When I asked him about it once, he just shrugged and said some things are worth keeping even when they're broken. I should probably start at the beginning, back when I didn't know anything about broken watches or the kind of man who wears them anyway. It was October when we met, one of those perfect Boston falls where the air turns crisp and golden and you can almost forgive the city for the winter that's coming. I was at the Haymarket, this farmer's market near North End, trying to pick out apples for a pie I had absolutely no business attempting to make. I'm Ethan, by the way. 28, marketing coordinator, completely hopeless in the kitchen, but determined to prove otherwise to literally no one but myself. I was standing there analyzing Honeycrisps like they held the secrets of the universe when someone reached past me for a Granny Smith. His arm brushed mine, and I caught a whiff of something woodsy and clean, like cedar and rain. I looked up, ready to do that polite Boston half-smile we give strangers, and found myself staring into the warmest brown eyes I'd ever seen. "Those are going to be too sweet for pie," he said, nodding at the Honeycrisps in my hand. His voice had this rough quality to it, like whiskey and smoke. "You want something with more acid. Granny Smiths are these." He held up a different variety I didn't recognize. "I'm not sure I want anything anymore," I said, which came out more defensive than I meant. "I might just buy cookies." He laughed, and something in my chest did a weird flutter thing. "Hey, no judgment. I'm Marcus." He shifted his canvas bag to his left hand and extended his right. His handshake was warm and firm, and I noticed the watch immediately. It looked like something from the 70s, all angular silver and a brown leather band that had molded to the shape of his wrist. There was a particular intimacy to that, I thought, the way an object becomes part of someone's body over time. "Ethan," I said, holding on maybe a second too long. We ended up getting coffee, which turned into lunch, which turned into walking along the harbor as the sun set and painted everything orange and pink. Marcus was a carpenter, 32, with these incredibly capable hands that he talked with when he got excited about something. He'd grown up in Providence, moved to Boston for work, lived alone in a studio in Jamaica Plain that he was slowly renovating himself. "It's basically held together with hope and wood glue at this point," he said, grinning. "But it's mine." I told him about my apartment in Somerville, the third-floor walk-up with the slanted floors and the radiator that clanged like an angry prisoner at 3 a.m. I told him about my job, which I didn't hate, but didn't love either, and my complete inability to cook anything more complicated than pasta. I told him things I usually kept buried until at least the third date, and he listened like every word mattered. When he finally checked his watch as the streetlights flickered on, I saw him pause, then laugh softly. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. I always forget it doesn't work." He tapped the crystal face. "Stopped years ago. I keep meaning to get it fixed. Why don't you?" He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the water. "It was my grandfather's. He died when I was 19, left it to me in his will. It stopped working about 6 months later, and I don't know. It felt like if I got it fixed, I'd be admitting he was really gone. Stupid, right?" "No," I said, and meant it. "Not stupid at all." That was the thing about Marcus. He had this way of being vulnerable that didn't feel performative or manipulative. He just existed in his emotions honestly, like they were facts about himself worth sharing. It made me want to be braver with my own. We started seeing each other after that. Nothing official at first, just texting throughout the day and meeting up whenever our schedules aligned. He'd show up at my apartment after work sometimes, still dusted with sawdust, and we'd order takeout and watch old movies on my laptop. Other times I'd go to his place and he'd cook these elaborate meals while I sat on his counter and handed him ingredients, playing sous chef to his easy competence. The first time we kissed was in his studio, about 3 weeks in. He was showing me a bookshelf he'd built, running his hand along the joints to demonstrate how they fit together, and I just couldn't stand the distance between us anymore. I leaned in and pressed my lips to his, tasting coffee and something sweet, and he made this small, surprised sound before kissing me back. His hand came up to cup my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone, and I felt like every romance novel I'd ever secretly read was suddenly impossibly real. "I've wanted to do that since the apples," I whispered against his mouth. "I've wanted you to do that since the apples," he whispered back. Things got intense fast after that. Not just physically, though God, that was incredible too, but emotionally. We fell into each other's lives like we'd always been there, like we were just remembering something we'd forgotten rather than discovering something new. He kept a toothbrush at my place. I kept clean work clothes at his. We learned each other's coffee orders and alarm times and the specific way the other person liked to be held when they'd had a bad day. I learned that Marcus was a morning person who woke up smiling, while I was a night owl who needed at least 20 minutes and 2 cups of coffee before I could form sentences. He learned that I got anxious about work stuff and needed to talk through it out loud, even when there was no solution. We learned each other's bodies too. The scar on his shoulder from a table saw accident, the birthmark on my hip, the sounds we made, and the ways we fit together in the dark. The watch was always there, on his wrist or on my nightstand, a constant presence. I got used to checking it and having to look at my phone for the actual time. It became a running joke between us. "What time is it?" I'd ask. 3:47, he'd say with a straight face, then check his phone. "Actually 8:15. We should get going." 4 months in, he said he loved me. We were in my bed on a Sunday morning, that gray winter light filtering through my curtains, and he just said it. Simple. Clean. "I love you, Ethan," like it was the easiest truth in the world. I said it back because I did. I loved him so much it scared me sometimes, the intensity of it. I'd never been good at relationships before Marcus. I'd always held something back, kept an exit strategy ready. But with him, I wanted to stay. I wanted to build something that lasted. We talked about the future in those careful, hypothetical ways people do when they're testing the waters. Maybe we'd move in together when my lease was up. Maybe we'd get a dog. Maybe we'd take that trip to Maine in the summer, rent a cabin, spend a week doing nothing but existing together. All these maybes that felt like promises. Then spring came, and something shifted. It was subtle at first. Marcus got quieter, more distant. He'd zone out during conversations, and I'd have to say his name twice before he'd focus on me. He stopped initiating plans, just agreeing to whatever I suggested with this distracted air. The sex became less frequent, and when it did happen, it felt like he was going through the motions. "Are you okay?" I asked him one night in April. We were at his place, and he was staring at the wall instead of the movie we'd put on. "Yeah, just tired. Work's been busy." But it wasn't just work. I could feel him pulling away, and I didn't know how to pull him back. I tried giving him space. I tried being more present. I tried asking direct questions and accepting vague answers. Nothing worked. He was slipping away from me, and I was helpless to stop it. The end came in May, on a Tuesday morning. He'd stayed over, which had become rare, and I woke up to find him already dressed, sitting on the edge of my bed. "We need to talk," he said, and my stomach dropped. I sat up, pulling the blanket around myself like it could protect me from what was coming. "Okay. I can't do this anymore." His voice was flat, carefully controlled. "I care about you, Ethan. I do, but I can't be in this relationship right now." "Why not?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "Did I do something wrong?" "No. God, no. This isn't about you." He ran his hand through his hair, and I noticed the watch catch the morning light. I need to figure some things out, on my own." "What things?" Marcus talked to me. "We can work through whatever this is." "We can't." He stood up, and I saw his jaw clench. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't explain it right now. I just need to go." He left. Just walked out of my apartment and my life. And I sat there in my bed, feeling like the floor had opened up beneath me. I called him later that day, and it went to voicemail. I texted him, and the messages went unanswered. After a week, I stopped trying. What was the point? He'd made his choice. I went through all the predictable stages. Denial, where I convinced myself he'd come back once he figured out whatever he needed to figure out. Anger, where I resented him for not trusting me enough to let me help. Bargaining, where I replayed every conversation looking for the moment I could have changed things. Depression, where I mostly just stayed in bed and let my friends bring me food and tell me it would get better. And then I found the watch. I was cleaning my apartment, finally, 3 weeks after he left, trying to erase the traces of him, or maybe trying to hold on to them. I wasn't sure which. I moved my bed to vacuum underneath, and there it was, behind the radiator. The watch. His grandfather's watch that never worked but that he wore anyway. I picked it up and something cracked open in my chest. He'd left it here. This thing that mattered to him, this connection to someone he'd loved and lost, and he'd left it in my apartment. I held it to my ear out of habit, listening for the tick that wouldn't come. That's when I started crying. Not the angry tears or the sad tears, but something deeper. Grief, maybe, for what we'd had and what we'd lost. For Marcus and whatever he was going through that he couldn't share with me. For myself and my inability to fix it. I could have texted him, told him I found it, arranged to give it back, but I didn't. I put it in my nightstand drawer and tried to forget about it. 2 months passed. Summer came to Boston, hot and humid. I went through the motions of my life, and slowly, it started to hurt less. I went on a few dates that went nowhere. I focused on work. I spent time with friends. I learned how to be alone again. Then, on a Thursday evening in July, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there was Marcus. He looked different, thinner, tired, but his eyes were the same warm brown. When they met mine, I saw everything I'd been trying to forget. "Hi," he said. "Hi." We stood there for a long moment, and I didn't know whether to slam the door or pull him inside or start yelling or start crying. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, and he walked into my apartment like he was entering a sacred space. He looked around at the familiar rooms, and I wondered what he saw, what had changed, what had stayed the same. "I owe you an explanation," he said finally. "I owed you one 2 months ago, but I wasn't ready. I'm ready now, if you'll listen." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He sat on my couch, and I sat in the chair across from him, maintaining distance. He took a breath, and I watched his hands clench and unclench in his lap. "My grandfather didn't just die when I was 19, he started. "He killed himself. Depression. He'd struggled with it his whole life, and one day it was just too much." He looked up at me. "I found him. I was the one who found him." Oh God. "I inherited more than just his watch," Marcus continued. "I inherited his brain chemistry, his depression. I've been dealing with it since I was a teenager, and most of the time I manage it okay. But sometimes it gets bad. Really bad. And this spring, it got bad." I wanted to go to him, but I stayed in my chair, letting him talk. I could feel it coming, and I panicked. I didn't want you to see me like that. I didn't want you to have to deal with it, so I ran. I pushed you away before you could see how broken I was. His voice cracked. "It was the stupidest thing I've ever done, and I'm so sorry." "You're not broken," I said quietly. "Sometimes I feel like I am, like this watch." He looked down at his bare wrist, and I realized he hadn't been wearing it. Stopped working, but still there, still taking up space. "Marcus." I finally crossed the room and sat next to him. "Why didn't you tell me? I would have understood. I would have helped." "I know. That's what scared me. I didn't want to be your burden. I didn't want to be something you had to fix." "You're not a burden. You're someone I love, or loved. I don't even know anymore." I felt tears building. "You hurt me. You just left without explaining, and I spent weeks thinking I'd done something wrong. You didn't. God, Ethan, you didn't do anything wrong. You were perfect, and that made it harder. I didn't feel like I deserved you." We sat there, both of us crying now, both of us broken open in different ways. "I found your watch," I said finally. "It's in my nightstand. You left it here." He looked surprised. "I've been looking for that everywhere. I thought I lost it." I got up and retrieved it, brought it back to him. He took it carefully, like it might shatter, and turned it over in his hands. "It stopped at 3:47, I said. "The day your grandfather died?" He nodded. 3:47 p.m. I found him at 4:15. Sometimes I think the watch knew before I did. "Have you thought about getting it fixed? Really fixed, I mean? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I've been in therapy, real therapy, not just the kind where you talk about your feelings for 50 minutes and leave, intensive stuff, medication adjustments, the works. And my therapist asked me the same thing, about the watch, about what it means to keep carrying something that doesn't work anymore. What did you tell her? I said I wasn't ready to let it go, but maybe I'm ready to let it work again, to let it move forward instead of staying stuck. He looked at me. That's why I'm here. Not just to apologize, though I am sorry. So incredibly sorry. But to ask if maybe we could try again. If maybe you'd be willing to move forward with me, even knowing what you know now. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd fallen in love with, who'd broken my heart, who was sitting in my apartment asking for another chance. It would be easy to say no, to protect myself from getting hurt again, to keep my own heart frozen at 347, stuck in the moment of loss. But some things are worth keeping even when they're broken, and some things are worth fixing. I'm willing to try, I said. But we have to talk about things, all the things. You can't run away when it gets hard. I won't, I promise. I'm learning how not to. And I need time to trust you again, to trust us again. I understand. I'll take whatever time you need to give me. I reached for his hand and he let me take it. His skin was warm, familiar, home. Okay, I said, let's try. That was 4 months ago. We're taking it slow, rebuilding what we had into something stronger, something that can weather the storms we both carry. Marcus got his watch fixed last month. It ticks now, keeps perfect time, moves forward the way it's supposed to. But he kept the scratches on the crystal, the worn leather band, all the marks of what it's been through. Sometimes I catch him looking at it, and I know he's thinking about his grandfather, about time and loss and the things we carry. But mostly, I think he's just checking to see if we're running late for dinner. We're learning how to do this together. The depression doesn't just disappear because we talked about it, because he's in treatment. There are still hard days. Days when he needs space, when the darkness creeps in despite everything. But now he tells me. Now we face it together. And on the good days, which are most days, we're building something real. Last week we were at the farmer's market again, full circle. He was picking out apples, and I was watching him with this overwhelming sense of gratitude. For second chances, for broken things that get fixed, for time moving forward instead of standing still. Granny Smiths or Honey Crisps? He asked, holding up both. Surprise me, I said. He grinned, grabbed both kinds, and reached for my hand. His watch caught the autumn light, ticking steadily, and I thought about how nothing stays broken forever if you're willing to do the work of healing. How love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We walked home together through the Boston fall, and for the first time in months I felt like we had all the time in the world.